Jesus said, "You know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time?" This question reminds me of a story. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived an emperor who was very fond of his position and power, but perhaps even more fond of his royal attire. In fact, this emperor could be said to be found far more often in his wardrobe rooms than on his throne or in his council. Two clever and deceiving tailors decided to gamble on this emperor's vanity and see just how much he had taught his kingdom about the importance of keeping up appearances. Sounding familiar? These tailors promised the emperor the finest of cloth that could only be seen by those fit for office and invisible to those who were foolish. Betting on human pride and ego, these tailors managed to dupe the entire royal court and the emperor himself into donning an outfit of thin air. From top down, each person believed more in the tailor's tale than they did in their own ability to see the naked truth standing right in front of them. Those in high position had much to lose by admitting that they saw nothing. But what do you suppose happened when the king decided to parade through his entire kingdom? Well, more of the same. Fear, my friends, spreads just as rapidly and as rampantly as Southern kudzu. Even the townspeople would rather buy into a lie that was set before them than to appear to be unfit or foolish. All of the townspeople gave into their own insecurities as they oohed and they awed over the non-existent robes. All of the townspeople, except for an innocent child, who at last blurted out, much to the shock of all those around him, "Why does the emperor have on no clothes?" I suppose that child had not lived long enough to lose faith in his ability to interpret the present time. He had not lived long enough to doubt his own worthiness to speak out against absurdity. He had not lived long enough to be told to blend in, go with the flow, trust the action of the masses around you, even if it means becoming a part of a foolish parade. Jesus said, "You know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time?" At what point do we look around, see the absurdity in our society, and find the courage to speak up and say, "This just ain't right"? At what point do we trust ourselves enough to interpret the absurd parade of consumerism, of greed, of oppression, and fear in our society as foolishness, instead of assuming that we are the ones with eyes that cannot see? At what point do we risk dividing ourselves away from the crowd, stepping out and away from our brothers, our sisters, our fathers and mothers, and many whom we love, and start not only seeing the absurdity, but naming it out loud? At what point do we risk being the one who reveals the nakedness of foolish ways, even if we know that it might get us laughed at, scorned, or excluded? Do we trust ourselves enough to interpret the present times? Do we have the courage of a little boy to speak up when the masses around us are silent, or at best, whispering under their breath? I certainly hope so. I want to walk as a child of the light. I want us to be the church of this little boy. I want us to be a place where we can ask tough questions when we see something that is not right. And I want us to be the place that goes about changing it for the better, with God's help and with grace and humility. Jesus said, "I come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled." It's time to light the fire. It's time to light the fire of change in our community, not when we can fit it in conveniently, not in the comfort and safety of what is familiar, and not by doing just enough, but by going all in. Just as we have spent late nights watching Olympians give it their all, it's time for us to do the same. We need to get out on that playing field and go big or go home. I can't tell you what that looks like for each of you individually or for your families, but I challenge you to give it some serious thought and prayer this week. What foolishness are you seeing that needs to be named? How will you light the fire of change boldly, but with a spirit of love and humility? The trick will be going about this with a spirit of love and humility. We all love the idea of speaking the truth and dropping the mic and walking off stage right. But let me tell you, friends, it's one thing to name a truth in order to point fingers at everyone else in the crowd. It's another thing entirely to name a truth because you want to go about making it right. Humility nurtures and kindles the fires of civility and love that are a lost art in our world today. Jesus invites us to be a part of the parade that is free of pomp and circumstance, free of pride and pageantry. He invites us to divide ourselves from the earthly desires that plague every kingdom in every age. Jesus invites us to shed the robes of greed and of fear and instead become a people ready to interpret the kingdom around us in new ways, with eyes wide open. We can't wait for others to do it for us, or we'll find ourselves, just like this little boy, in the midst of a crowd that is all too afraid to interpret what is happening in their midst. So spend this week and take a good look around. See the clouds rising in the west, the south winds blowing, and then look beyond the earth and the sky. Look into your hearts and look to God. And start asking some hard questions. What foolishness are you seeing that needs to be named? How will you light the fire of change boldly and with a spirit of love and humility? Friends, it is a great time to be at Holy Communion. And if you are ready to kindle the flames, then I am ready to see just how big this fire can get. Amen.